we'll move ahead. So first we'll discuss this, which is MTP RTP, consolidated MTP RTP, वो discuss करते हैं. Questions करेंगे, quickly answer discuss करेंगे, and we'll move forward. A notice when required. So you'll know, you'll get an idea of what kind of questions are asked in the examination. Okay. This MTP RTP and past exam questions both we'll do today. And I was trying to say something for other laws. So for general clauses, interpretation and LLP. LLP का अपन ने foundation का लिया because LLP was not there in inter. So as a reference, we have taken the foundation questions का consolidation, so that we'll know. And for FEMA, we will take the final questions consolidation. ठीक है? चल. A notice when required under the statutory rules to be sent by registered post acknowledgement due is instead sent by registered post only. Whether the protection of presumption regarding serving of notice by registered post under General Clauses Act is tenable, referring to the provisions examined. So we had studied in service by post that if it has to be sent by registered post acknowledgement due, then you have to send it by that way only, because there you will have to take an acknowledgement. In registered post, I can just as a postman come and drop the letter. So that is not allowed. So you have to, this is not tenable, you have to send by registered post acknowledgement due only. Mr. Ram, an advocate, had fraudulently deceived his client Mr. Shyam, who was taking his expert advice on taxation matters. Now, Mr. Ram is liable to fine for actually acting fraudulently both under the Advocates Act as well as the Income Tax Act. State whether the offence is punishable under both the acts of General Clauses Act. So again, case study, but very simple, that you cannot be punished for the same offence twice. So any one of the acts he will be liable. Vyas owned a land with 50 tamarind trees. He sold his land and timber he sold his land and timber obtained after cutting the 50 trees to Yash. Vyas wants to know whether sale of timber amounts to sale of immovable property. Advise him on the provisions under the General Clauses Act. So sale of land is immovable property. Immovable property ka 4 things were there. Land, benefits to arise out of land, things attached to the earth or permanently fastened to the earth. But timber jo hai is something which has already been cut and given. So now that is not immovable property because it is not attached to the earth. So it is not considered to be immovable property. Mr. Vyas is the owner of house number 20 in Geeta Colony, Delhi. He has rented 2 rooms in the house to Mr. Iyer. Income Tax Authority has served a show cause notice to Mr. Vyas. The said notice was received by Mr. Iyer and returned the notice with an endorsement of refusal. Decide with reference to provisions of General Clauses Act whether the notice was rightfully served on Mr. Vyas. So, in service by post, I told you those case studies which are there are very, very important. One of the case studies said that if it is given to the landlord, the notice is given to the landlord, but if it is refused by the tenant, then in that case it will be deemed to be validly served. So in this case it is deemed to be validly served to Mr. Vyas. Komal Limited, declares a dividend for its shareholders in the annual general meeting held on 27 September 2019. Referring to the provisions of General Clauses and Companies Act, advice. This is a question I was mentioning the other day. These are the questions that are, this is a question which is generally asked. Advise the dates during which Komal is required to pay the dividend. Kitne din ke andar you have to pay. Dates during which Komal is required to transfer the unpaid or unclaimed dividend to unpaid dividend account. So why is General Clauses Act coming here? This is all about dividend, right? But here when you are calculating dividend 30 days may you have to pay, so that is your Companies Act, and unclaimed amount to be unpaid unclaimed amount to be transferred to the account within 7 days from the end of the 38-day period, that is also Companies Act. But when you are calculating from this date, exclude the first in the series of days and include the last in the series of days. So that you will have to write because they have mentioned as per the provisions of General. So you will have to write that, as per General Clauses Act, when you are calculating the amount, exclude the first in the series of days, include the last, then you will get the marks, and then of course you will have to give the correct date. When you are calculating, 27th is to be excluded and the last 38 days to be included. Okay? What is the meaning of service by post as per General Clauses Act? It has to be properly addressed, sent by post, registered post, and signed and stamped. 4 effects of repeal. Those 5 things which I told you, that 5 effects of repeal, any 4 you have to write. So these are the 5 which we have to remember. Revive anything not enforced or prevailed, affect prior management, affect any claim, privilege, responsibility or debt, affect any punishment, forfeiture, affect any inquiry, litigation or remedy. Explain the various provisions applicable to rules or bylaws being made after the previous publications as enumerated. So, if rules or bylaws are to be made, how will you make it? Same like how you do Bill to Act, same way you have to make the bylaws, put up a draft, people will come and comment, edit the draft, put up another draft, again people will comment, again edit, and then give the final draft which will be published. Mr. Sohan has issued a promissory note of ₹1000 to Mr. Mohan on 17th May 2021, payable 3 months after date. After that, a sudden holiday was declared on 20th August due to Muharram. As per the provisions, what should be the date of presentment of promissory note? So, if there is a holiday, whether it should be 19th or 21st August. So, whenever there is a holiday and if something is pending or to be done or tax deposited on a holiday, you have to do it on the next working day, and hence it will be 21st. Pretty simple question, something which you will be able to answer. ऐसा कोई not very difficult questions, correct? Yes or no? Then, SEBI issue of capital and disclosure requirements, 5th Amendment Regulations 2015 was issued by SEBI wide notification dated, wide notification dated 14th August 2015 with effect from 1st Jan 16. Referring to the provisions of general clauses, examine the date of enforcement. So, you have to say that normally it is the date when it has been published in the official gazette, but sometimes the act will provide you the date on which it will come into force. So, if the commencement date is given, then the commencement date, if not the date of publication in official gazette. So, in this case it will be 1st of Jan. Explain the meaning of calculation of duty to be taken on pro rata basis as per General Clauses Act. Give an example. So, you have to give an example. If you don't, then marks will be deducted. So, here you will have to say that how different duties are there, if it's given on basis of weight or volume or whatever the case may be. When you are calculating, you calculate it pro rata. Mrs. Neelu Chandra was director in Laddu Sweets Private Limited. Once, while dealing with supplier of raw material, she agreed to get some secret commission from supplier for making the deal. Afterwards, on finding the facts, the company has filed a suit against Mrs. Neelu Chandra. She contended that 166 of the Companies Act provides a director of the company shall not achieve or attempt to achieve any undue gain or advantage either to himself or relative partner or associates. If such director is found guilty of making any undue gain, he shall be liable to pay an amount equal to the gain. She contended that section 166 is applicable to male directors only. She, being a female, will not be liable. So, we will say as per General Clauses Act, when a gender is referred to, it doesn't mean that it applies only to that gender, it applies to the other gender as well. Yogveer Singh has, this is your May 24 ka RTP. Yogveer Singh has a mango orchard at Manchanja village, Bilaspur. This has more than 100 mango trees. Yogveer Singh has sold orchard along with all the mango trees. Explain in the light of the provisions of General Clauses Act whether the sale of trees will be considered to be immovable property. So here sale of trees है, तभी जब भी किया था सेल ऑफ टिम्बर था. टिम्बर ऑलरेडी काट के जो लॉग्स दिखते हैं ना अपने को, that is timber. So already काट के रखा था. This is sale of trees, तो ये immovable property होगा because it is attached to the earth. ठीक है? So this is pertaining to General Clauses Act. I hope it is easy for you to understand. Now, interpretation is mostly theory. We'll just quickly see what kind of questions are asked here. Explain the meaning of the term proviso. Give distinction between proviso, exception and savings clause. जो अपना जो chart था वो, correct? Statute should be read as a whole. Explain the statement. You have to read the whole statute, not just a part of it. Many a time proviso is added to the section. Explain the function of such a proviso in the interpretation of section and provision. Explain whether foreign decision should be used for construction. So you have to say it is an external aid of interpretation and then explain why you can use it. Explain the function of proviso as an internal aid to construction. Preamble does not override the plain provision of the act. Comment gives suitable example. तो मैंने बोला था Companies Act का we will remember and we'll write it down. The meaning of the word is to be judged by the company it keeps. Explain the concept of nocite resoci. Again you have to say secondary rule of interpretation and then explain fresh juice, orange juice वाला example दे देने का. How will you interpret the following words? Means, includes. Give one illustration for each of the above from the statutes you are familiar with. So अपने याद रखा था means के लिए Companies Act का, company means a company formed, includes के लिए debentures का and means and includes के लिए stock का. Differentiate mandatory provision from a directory provision. What factors decide whether a provision is directory और मैंडेटरी? तो इट इज द सेम थिंग देर आस्किंग. शैल एंड मस्ट वाला खाली उसको अलग वे में पूछा है. तो सॉरी शैल एंड मे वाला, शैल वाला रहेगा तो मैंडेटरी, मे रहेगा तो डायरेक्टरी. ग्रामेटिकल इंटरप्रिटेशन. व्हाट आर द एक्सेप्शंस टू ग्रामेटिकल इंटरप्रिटेशन? व्हाट इज अ डॉक्यूमेंट एज पर इंडियन एविडेंस एक्ट? Write short note on proviso explanation with reference to interpretation of statute, deeds and documents. At the time of interpreting, what will be the effect of usage or customs and practices? Again, secondary rule of interpretation please mention करना और जो दो legal maxims है वो ensure करना कि mention किया है. Explain dictionary definition can be of great help. Define grammatical interpretation. What are the exceptions to grammatical interpretation? Does explanation added to a section widen the ambit of the section? Of course it widens the ambit because explanation जो है is further explaining a section which is already there. So it is widening the ambit, but they are trying to ask you what is an explanation, what does it mean? But yes, it does widen the ambit. Explain the rule in Hayden's case while interpreting the statutes. Quoting an example. जहाँ पे भी एग्जाम्पल लिखा है बराबर से पढ़ना एग्जाम में, क्योंकि एग्जाम्पल लिखा है तो यू हैव टू मेंशन. अगर कुछ नहीं लिखा एक्सप्लेन हेडन्स रूल, देन इफ यू डोंट मेंशन एग्जाम्पल तो शायद मार्क्स मिल भी जाए. बट अगर एग्जाम्पल लिखा है तो एग्जाम्पल मेंशन करना ही पड़ेगा. So हर एक के लिए remember for each rule of interpretation what example you want to write. Always remember and go so that you don't have to sit and think and make a new example. Explain with the meaning of without prejudice as harmonious aid to interpretation. Support your answer with an example. What does the principle of read the statute as a whole imply in interpretation? Explain with the help of example. Again this is May 24, तो तुमको तुम्हारा पूछने का chances high है. ठीक है. So these are MTP RTP जो अभी तक के थे वो consolidate करके अपन ने general clause और interpretation का निकाला है. Past exam questions देख लेते हैं. X owned a land with 50 tamarind trees. He sold his land and obtained after cutting the 50 trees to Y. X wants to know whether the sale of timber tantamounts to sale of immovable property. Advise. ये सेम अपन ने अभी किया तो ऐसा कुछ नया नहीं होगा एग्जाम पेपर. इफ यू सी एक्सप्लेन ब्रीफली एनी 4 effects of repeal. Again we discussed this. Meaning of service by post discussed. Komal Limited same का same है इधर. Declares dividend for its shareholders on 27 September and dates on referring to provisions of both general clauses and companies. Explain कौन सा डेट है and unpaid unclaimed में कब जाएगा. Explain the various rules or bylaws made after previous publication. The Companies Act provides that the amount of dividend remained unpaid or unclaimed on expiry of 30 days from date of declaration shall be transferred to unpaid dividend account within 7 days from the date of expiry of such 30 days. If the expiry is on 30th, decide the last date. So first in the series exclude, last include, वही same. Referring to the provisions, find out the day on which the following act or regulation comes into force. An act of parliament which has not specifically mentioned a particular date. तो अगर नहीं mention किया, not mentioned, then in that case जिस दिन पे official gazette में publish हुआ, and ये सेबी वाला example 1st Jan अपन ने अभी किया. What do you understand by the term good faith? Explain as per General Clauses Act. Mr. X purchased a watch from Mr. Y carelessly without proper inquiry. Whether the purchase could be said to be made in good faith? तो नहीं, because due care and skill as a man of ordinary prudence would होना चाहिए. तो अगर without inquiry तूने ऐसे खरीद लिया, then not good faith. Define the term affidavit. Mrs. K went to a jewelry shop to purchase diamond ornaments. The owner of jewelry shop are notorious and indulge in smuggling activities. Mrs. K purchased diamonds honestly without making proper inquiries. Whether it was done in good faith. Same question, खाली नाम और थोड़ा scenario change करके. There are two ways to reach from city A from city A to city B. The distance between the two cities is 100 kilometers by road and 80 kilometers by water. However, how is the distance measured for general clauses? तो वो straight line में होना चाहिए, खाली इतना ही लिख के आना है, हो गया. Then define affidavit and good faith. If you see affidavit, good faith घड़ी घड़ी आया है. Then PK and VK had a long dispute regarding the ownership of land for which a legal suit was pending in the court. The court fixed the date of hearing on 29th of April 2018, which was announced to be a holiday subsequently by the government. What will be the computation of time? So जो next working date है वो होगा. Income tax 1961 provides gratuity paid by the government to its employees is fully exempt from tax. You are required to explain the scope of the term government and clarify whether the exemption from gratuity income will be available to state government employees. इतना शान पट्टी किया. What they are asking simple question. What is the definition of government? Definition of government में लिखा था central and state दोनों include होगा, तो state government employees include होंगे. तो एकदम basic definition, but थोड़ा ऐसा शाना बन के वो लोग ने पूछा. The act done negligently shall be deemed to be done in good faith. Comment with the help of provisions of general clauses. Basically, you have to explain what good faith is with example. Explain the validity of following statements. Insurance policies covering immovable property have been held to be immovable property. ऐसा कुछ बोला है immovable के property में नहीं. So you have to say 4 things: land, benefits arising out of land, things attached to earth and permanently fastened to the earth. यही 4 चीजें. तो insurance policy is none of them, so not valid. The word bullocks could be interpreted to include cows. ये मैंने तुम लोग को बोला था एक. There's a case study which is there which is asked, so it is true. Ajit was supposed to submit an appeal to High Court on 30th March, which was the last day on which the appeal could be submitted. Unfortunately, on that date, the High Court was closed due to lockdown. And what remedy does he have? Next working day. Same to same questions. कुछ भी innovation नहीं है. Zero innovation. Confusion regarding the meaning of financial year arose among the financial executive and accountant of a company. Both were having different arguments regarding the meaning of financial year and calendar year. What is the correct meaning of financial year? How is it different from a calendar year? April to March, Jan to December. Explain. Rule, oath, person. Provisions regarding to effect of repeal. MC has published in the Gazette of India the proposed draft of rules further to amend certain rules under the Companies Act. The MCA has made some modifications in the draft rules already published. In the light of the provisions, answer the following. Is it required for MCA to publish a draft of the proposed rules? Is it required to publish the draft? Yes, of course you have to publish the draft. In case of irregularities in publication, can it be questioned? ऐसा कोई provision नहीं दिया है. Is MC entitled to make suitable changes? Yes, person who can issue can amend it, delete it, whatever they want to do, they can do it. Is it necessary to republish the rules in the amended form when the changes are made are ancillary to the earlier draft? Yes. Mr. A, landlord, staying in Delhi, rented his flat of Bangalore to Mr. B for rupees 20,000 per month to be paid. An agreement was made between them that during the tenancy period, if A requires his flat to be vacated, 1 month prior notice is to be given to Mr. B. After 8 months, a notice was sent by Mr. A to B to vacate his flat by registered post, which was refused to be accepted by Mrs. C, wife of Mr. B. Mr. B denied to vacate the flat on the ground of non-receipt of notice. Explain. अगर refuse किया है, it will be deemed to be validly served. ये क्या है? अच्छा, case law लिखा है. हाँ. What is the meaning of official gazette as per the provisions? अपने को पता है. Whether an act is repealed, it must be considered as if it never existed. Comment on this. ये जो आपको मैंने कल केस स्टडी बोला था, जो नेक्स्ट पेज पे वो टेबल आ रहा था, between difference between repeal and deletion. That is what you will explain here. No one shall be prosecuted and punished for the same offence more than once. Explain in the light of General Clauses Act. A clause that begins with notwithstanding anything contained is a clause that has the effect of making the provisions prevail over the others, correct? It can operate at 4 levels. Explain any 2 of them. Interpretation of statutes. Differentiate between mandatory provision from a directory provision. What factors decide whether provision is directory or mandatory? Grammatical interpretation. What are the exceptions to grammatical interpretation? What is a document? Proviso and explanation. Mischief rule for interpretation of statute. Give the 4 matters it considers. तो जो 4 questions है वो लिख के आने का. Dictionary definition and interpretation. Repeal of provision is different from deletion of provision. Again the same thing that we discussed. Preamble does not override plain provisions. How will you understand provision is mandatory or directory? इतना simple question कितनी बार पूछा है देखो. It is defined company means a company incorporated under this person includes this under consumer. How would you interpret and construct the nature and scope of the above definition? So basically it is asking you means and includes only. तो बताने का means रहेगा तो exhaustive, includes रहेगा तो inclusive, ऐसा करके explain करने का. How will you interpret the term instrument at the time of interpreting? What will be the effect of usage or practice? Write a short note on proviso. Associate words to be understood in the common sense manner. Explain with regards to the rules or interpretation, the effect of usage. And Nositir. Sohail, a director of a company, not being personally concerned or interested financially or otherwise in a matter of proposed motion placed before the board meeting, did not disclose his interest, although he has knowledge that his sister is interested in that proposal. He restrains from making any disclosure of his interest on the presumption that he is not required by law to disclose any interest. He is not personally interested or concerned in the proposal. He made this assumption relying on the rule of literal construction. Explaining the scope, decide whether the decision of Sohail is correct. तो अगर personally नहीं है but एक कोई interest है, बहन का interest है तो it is your interest also, correct? You will always want to do something that benefits your family members. So even though act is saying कि personal interest होना चाहिए, but if you don't have personal interest, even if you have indirect interest, it is an interest. So you have to say reasonable construction होना चाहिए, क्योंकि literal construction, if I am reading, it's not going with the intention of the legislature, creating ambiguity. Hence you refer to reasonable construction. What is external aid to interpretation? Explain how dictionary definitions are the external aids to interpretation. Means and includes को define करना है. Foreign decisions can be used. Mischief rule, Hayden's rule, 4 matters to be considered. How are the following external interpretation? Historical setting, use of foreign decisions. Does explanation added to a section widen its ambit? Effect of proviso, main provisions explained with reference to interpretation. Grammatical and logical interpretation, state situations where court will adopt them. Then ejusdem generis, cases where ejusdem generis will not apply. ejusdem generis तभी apply होता है specific words followed by generic word. अगर वो नहीं होता है तो then it doesn't apply. Doctrine of contemporary exposito is whatever your effect of usage. Nocitere soci and usage, customs and practices. So same के same questions है. If you see there is nothing that you can not answer in these questions, correct? अगर अपन ने पढ़ा है अपने को अभी जो रिवाइज किया उसके बेसिस पे भी आई एम कॉन्फिडेंट दैट यू विल बी एबल टू राइट दीज आंसर्स. सो एक बार रीड करके जाओगे तो ऑफकोर्स यू विल बी एबल टू राइट. If you have not tried writing it by yourself, please ensure you try writing it. If you can't, it's fine. Make sure you attempt all the papers. Write papers, तो उसमें तुमको एक आइडिया आ जाएगा अगर तुमको इसका अलग से बैठ के नहीं लिखना है तो. ठीक है. Now, limited liability partnership. State the circumstances under which LLP and its partners may face unlimited liability. Unlimited liability I said दो ही बार होता है, correct? What are the two scenarios? One is in case of fraud and second is if number of members fall below 2 and you continue to run business beyond 6 months, correct? Limited liability partnership gives benefit of limited liability of a company on one hand and flexibility of partnership on other. Discuss तो दोनों का benefit लिखेंगे. State the rules regarding registered office of LLP and change as per the LLP Act. Change in the office. So registered office जो है is for receiving notice communication. You have to inform the registrar of LLP. Any change also has to be intimated to the registrar LLP. अगर नहीं किया तो ऑफकोर्स फाइन लगेगा, वो लिख देना. एक्सप्लेन द इनकॉर्पोरेशन by registration of LLP and its essential elements under the LLP Act. So basically incorporation, what is the process? Name approval करने का, LLP agreement देने का, consent of designated partners देने का, that is it, and then you will get the certificate of incorporation. Okay, that is it. So May 22 तक का है, ठीक है. Broadly you've got an idea of what kind of questions will be asked in LLP. जो फाउंडेशन में पूछा था सेम का सेम चीज यहाँ पे पूछने वाले, बिकॉज द एक्ट हैज नॉट चेंज. एवरीथिंग दैट वाज देयर, यू हैड द फुल एक्ट इन फाउंडेशन, फुल एक्ट इन इंटर, सो नथिंग हैज चेंज्ड. एलएलपी इज व्हाट वी नो, जनरल क्लॉजेस इंटरप्रिटेशन, एज वी सॉ that it may seem very technical and scary, but it is not at all. The questions are same to same, no innovation at all, correct? So that is it for this, and now we will start with share capital करेंगे आज. वो चार्ट बुक है ये, सॉरी. यस, चालू करेंगे.